4 education priorities. 5 Secretaries of State in just over 1 year, and at one point, 3 in 3 days. And whilst we have seen quality as well as quantity come and go, the political turmoil of the last few months has done absolutely nothing for our schools and for our young people. At last, however, stability and commitment, hopefully, are the order of the day. Our new Secretary of State has had experience as a previous Minister for Apprenticeships and Skills, and the return of Nick Gibb sees the reinstatement of a very experienced and highly committed minister with a passionate determination to raise standards. The arrival in the department of Robert Halfon, the long-standing chair of the Education Select Committee, adds further invaluable experience, whilst the return of Michael Gove once again puts levelling up with education at its heart, at the very centre of the Sunak government. We should be positive and hopeful. But what a time to assume office. The most immediate issue in the in-tray is the very real possibility of teacher strikes in the new year, with teachers demanding a fully funded above inflation pay rise. If Mary Boosted of the National Education Union is correct, and teachers' salaries have dropped by 20% in real terms since 2010, then it's not surprising that the profession is beginning to mobilise, especially when we add falling salaries to long-standing work issues. Let's not forget that teachers complete more unpaid overtime than practically any other profession. And in the words of the recent Times Education report, many older teachers feel patronised and disempowered. At the same time, however, the Chancellor is still facing a significant black hole in his budget planning, whilst a £300 to £400 billion bill for COVID is still to be paid. How can we, as a country, pay teachers more, not to mention nurses and other public sector workers? Do we raise taxes? Do we borrow more and leave the problem for future generations? Do we take money from other public sector workers and give it to teachers? None is ideal. It costs absolutely nothing to have a strong behaviour policy and to insist on high standards. It costs absolutely nothing to support your staff and to make them feel valued. It costs nothing to create an ethos of success. All of these are down to strong, dynamic leadership. Do teachers deserve a pay rise? Yes, they certainly do. And my plea is that the pay settlement is as generous as is feasibly and fiscally possible. But there are also other ways of raising the morale of the profession. Firstly, we simply need to recognise and to celebrate the phenomenal job that most schools and most teachers do. Most sport, music, drama, trips, the very things that give a school a soul and which do so much to engage youngsters and to broaden their horizons, are primarily and willingly undertaken outside school hours and for no remuneration. How do we recognise that? Ofsted is still viewed as negative, as threatening, and as unhelpful. Of course, we need a robust, reliable external inspection system, and there are still schools which are underperforming and need to be driven upwards. But let's not judge the majority by the minority. The vast majority of schools are doing well, and with genuine, long-term professional development, could do even better, more so than the panic-inducing banging on the chicken shed of Ofsted every 4 years. The fact that we are now on the 7th Ofsted framework, i.e. inspectors' priorities, the 7th Ofsted framework in 10 years, only adds to the feelings that education is a political football, that Ofsted is capricious and lacks professional understanding and credibility. Imminent strike action, however, should not cloud what is probably the biggest issue facing our schools, and one which has been successively pushed under the carpet. The issue of the recruitment and retention of teachers, and it is a double-edged sword. We can't retain enough experienced teachers, and we can't attract enough new blood. The real tragedy is that we probably in this country have more than enough teachers that we need. It's just that they no longer work in schools. The statistics are bleak. In addition to the large cohort of teachers in their 50s who will be retiring over the next few years, 31% of new teachers leave the profession within 5 years of qualifying. 40% leave within 10 years. Whilst in terms of teacher training, last year only 22% of places on physics courses were filled, only 23% of places on design technology courses were filled, and only 45% on business studies courses. Key subjects if we are serious about developing technical and vocational education. ASCL, the Heads Union, has reported that 95% of schools over the past year have found it difficult to recruit. 95%, and 65% have found it difficult to retain staff. Now, raising the starting salary for teachers to $30,000 may well help to attract more entrants. And it also sends out the right message that teaching is important. But just as I argued when discussing the strikes, money isn't the only issue. Our task is to make teachers feel valued, to recognise them for the job that they do, and to treat them as hard-working, committed professionals. If we don't resolve the recruitment and retention crisis, then our best laid plans for levelling up, for raising standards, will come to nothing. One of the biggest topics in education since 2019 has been the curriculum, i.e. what's taught in schools, with Amanda Spielman, the head of Ofsted, saying a couple of years ago that curriculum was the hot topic. Most recently, this debate has centred around practical, technical and vocational education, something which, despite its importance in the German and many Eastern European education systems, is only now being seriously reconsidered in this country with T-levels and apprenticeships. The next big question is whether or not technical and vocational courses should remain solely for post-16 education. Or is there a case for bringing more technical and vocational education into our mainstream schools? Certainly the idea was recently given a fillip by King Charles after his appearance on The Repair Shop, when he described the lack of vocational education as a great tragedy. Not everyone is designed for the academics, said King Charles. I know from the Prince's Trust, I have seen the difference we can make to people who have technical skills, which we need all the time. And let's not forget that despite all the money, all the initiatives, all the changes to the education system over the past 20 years, still over 1/3 of youngsters fail at GCSE. Now, no, this is not an argument to lower standards. This is not an argument for prizes for everyone. This is not to argue that we should stop teaching all youngsters history, geography and the subjects that allow young people to understand the country and the world in which they live. But it is to accept that a broader curriculum, yes, could help more to achieve. But perhaps more importantly, a broader curriculum could enable far more young people to make a much greater contribution to the post-Brexit economic life of this country. Finally, levelling up. As Boris Johnson once said, the best way to level up is to give every child in the country a superb education. At the moment, however, that is not the reality. Some 200,000 young children still cannot access a good primary school, whilst the disparity in exam results between some, but crucially not all, between some schools in deprived and affluent areas is stark. But this doesn't have to be. Much can be done in difficult schools without additional money. But of course, there are many initiatives that do cost money. It costs money to put on booster classes, to have smaller teaching groups, to run a vibrant and varied extracurriculum programme. It costs money to employ counsellors to help tackle mental health issues. But hopefully, with a more effective national funding formula, and with the identification of the 55 education investment areas or cold spots, some more money will be available. But to be blunt, if levelling up is to be of real and permanent benefit, providing a superb education for all must not just be a key ambition, it must be an ambition that we fulfil. In October of this year, the recent report by the Times Education Committee was presented to the House of Lords for discussion. Lord Lexton opened the debate quoting Disraeli's famous maxim, "Upon the education of the people of this country, the fate of this country depends." But Lord Lexton went on to remark pertinently that Disraeli's simple truth can be easily obscured by the many other issues that clamour for attention day by day in political debate. Let's just hope, with dedication, vision, practical solutions, and a superb education system, the fate of this country and of all its citizens can be a very happy, successful, and prosperous one.